you've described it as the rudest interview subject that you've ever encountered.
Chevy's way of dealing with things is doing bits. For someone who's so sharp, he's incredibly sensitive. And he can, he can dish it out, but he can't take it. I was a huge fan. I had no idea about his reputation, but little by little I started hearing more. And let me tell you, people start emailing you and everyone has a story.
Hello and welcome to Obsessed, the podcast. I'm Matt Wilstein from The Daily Beast, and in a little bit, I'm going to be talking with the director of a new documentary that I am personally obsessed with. It's called I'm Chevy Chase and You're Not, and you're going to get to hear me ask director Marina Zenovich what it was like when Chevy Chase called her essentially stupid to her face during the taping of the documentary. So that is some fun stuff coming up. But first, I'm here with my partner in crime on this podcast, Kevin Fallon. Kevin, how's it going?
I'm good. I'm still giggling at that title. I'm Chevy Chase and You're Not.
Yeah, that was his sign-off on Weekend Update. I don't know if you have to be kind of old to remember that, but
yeah, no, it's really funny just to hear out of context.
Yes. Well, you and I are old enough, maybe not to remember Saturday Night Live in the '70s, but we are old enough to remember some nostalgic TV, and that's sort of what I wanted to get into today because I've been watching a show this week that really just brings me back to the classic days of watching network TV, even though it is not a network show. Can you guess what I'm talking about, Kevin?
I think so. If it has anything to do with the medical drama that I used to sneak down the stairs when I was growing up and hide behind the couch when my parents were watching it on TV, and be kind of horrified by what I was watching, which was, of course, ER.
Yes.
And now, 30 years later, we're talking about my beloved Noah Wyle returning to the hospital scrubs in the pit, which is back now, officially back now. We can watch it.
Yes, it is back, and it's so great to have it back on time, the same time as it was last year. This is a very rare thing in TV now. I don't know if people really understand this, but so like Severance, you got to wait 3 years. I'm pretty sure Pluribus isn't going to come back for like another 2 or 3 years. But The Pit is back with us at the same time as it was last year in January, just like a classic network show in that way.
Yeah, I remember when Stranger Things was coming back over the holidays, and it had been something like 3.5 years since the last episode. And I was like, this is a reason why I'm not going to watch this last season. I don't have the time to go back and basically do what have been like Cliff Notes research like I was in high school to try to figure out what happened. And like you were saying, it's so rare that this happens that it's almost like a miracle to have a season 2 just come back 1 year later when we can still remember what the hell happened in the last season.
Yeah, so I don't know how you feel about watching this show. I think we both really like it, but I find it so simultaneously comforting and deeply stressful at the same time.
How do you find it comforting? It is so stressful. It's so upsetting.
But these characters, I think because, as you said, it hasn't been that long since it's been on. I feel like I got to know these people so well that having them back in my life just feels good. And I love the people on the show so much that I do feel like happy to be back in their presence, but it is so stressful.
My take on that is, yes, I also love these characters. I've fallen in love with them. They all have my heart. And to see them again in that ER, knowing that all hell is about to break loose and they're all going to be traumatized and be defeated and have mental breakdowns, it's like my poor beloved nurses and doctors. I don't want to see this happen to you again.
On 4th of July, no less, because this new season of the show, which like the first season takes place all in one day. We find out in the first few minutes of the episode of the premiere that it's the 4th of July, which I was watching with my wife, who is a doctor. She's not an ER doctor, but she sort of knows that world. And as soon as she saw 4th of July come up on the screen, she was like, "Oh no, this is gonna be bad. That's the worst day that you could possibly be working in the ER." So I think that tells us something about what's to come.
I remember this. I can't believe I'm sharing the story. I once had gotten a ticket for something that happened on the 4th of July, so I had to appear in court, and that it was me and then 500 people who had fireworks summons for doing something with fireworks and blown off their hands. They all had bandages and burns everywhere, and then just like me, it was really funny. So I empathize with your wife. And I also had that same thought, like, oh my gosh, you're doing July 4th. Like, everyone's about to be maimed and
Yeah.
drunk and a mess.
Yeah, they make a comment at the beginning that no one's come in with blown off fingers yet, but it is only 7 a.m, so I guess that makes sense. Speaking of all the blood and guts on this show and on that day that you went to court, how do you deal with the sort of gruesome stuff on this show? Because I think it can make people pretty squeamish watching some of these procedures, which are incredibly realistic and pretty gross.
So I'm one of those people that I'm so fascinated by the miracle of what they're able to do. Like, they have these bodies just like fully ripped open. In this episode, there are like 5 different doctors with their hands inside and organs, twisting them around and pulling them out, and like basically doing one of those like cats in the cradle yarn games with organs and intestines and lungs. It's insane. So I find that fascinating. What I can't handle is when people are self-inflicting some sort of gross thing. So that's why like horror isn't my jam. But watching something like The Pit, I find just endlessly interesting. And when I watch the show, I have like this simultaneous thing of like every doctor who can do this stuff deserves everything in the world because it's so mind-blowing that they're capable of doing this. I also realize that I never, ever want to be in an ER department because somehow every single person who ends up there is naked in front of all of these people. The amount of naked patients just lying around on this show, that's the thing that traumatizes me. This is why I will live a careful, safe life so that I don't have to be fully naked in front of doctors in New York City ER department.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about what you thought the hardest moment to watch was from this premiere, but you just reminded me of the shower scene from this premiere where this man comes in who's in really rough shape and he's very dirty and has probably been living on the street and is just not doing well, and they take him to this special outdoor shower, which I did not know existed in emergency room departments, to basically hose him down, get him clean. I also found out after the fact, I did not know this at all watching it, that actor played the character Skinny Pete on Breaking Bad. Unrecognizable, but interesting. But yeah, that was a particularly tough watch with that guy. And then I don't even know if I want to talk about what happens when they take his cast off.
I know that was almost like tasteful nudity for the show. Usually it's just like they bring in someone off of an ambulance and they cut off their clothes and then just like a penis is flopping around, or they rip off this woman's shirt and then all of a sudden she's topless for all these people. At least this person knew he was going to be naked in front of these nurses, and I think he sort of like relished it, but it was so gross, all the mud. I don't know if it was mud or feces that was on him. It was that's the kind of stuff that makes me squeamish. I can deal with the surgery and the mouth procedures.
Yeah. Was there another moment from the premiere that stuck out to you that just was like insane to watch, and that maybe didn't make you squeamish, but that people should, if they haven't watched yet, may need to ready their fingers to put in front of their eyes?
Not necessarily in the like it's hard to watch with your eyes kind of way, but just emotionally. There's a plot line about an abandoned baby that I think is going to be the catalyst for one of the more emotional through lines of the season. It's teased in this episode, and I think for sure it's going to come back again and again. And you can just sort of see in the very subtle ways. This cast is so brilliant because they don't give you a fireworks show when things happen, but you see in the little ways that their eyes move, or like a short catch of their breath, when something is really bad or really upsetting to them. And these are people that probably have a very high bar of what is bad or upsetting. So when you see them react or wince in a way that's, again, very, very short and hard to read, but you clock it, you know something big is about to happen. And I got that when they found this baby that was abandoned in the bathroom.
Yeah, and it also relates to that moment at the very end of the episode. I was curious what you thought of that, where this new doctor who's coming in basically to replace Noah Wiley's Dr. Robbie while he goes on a sabbatical, she's going to be the new chief. She has this very strange reaction to the baby in that final moment, and then it kind of cuts to black, and it really makes you want to watch the next episode, which of course you can't because this is a week-to-week show. But what did you make of that moment?
Yeah, that's what set me off on this theory that this is going to be the monumental storyline of the season. And I loved that it cut to black, and I love that we don't have another episode to watch until next week, because my experience watching something like The Traitors, which is one of my other obsessions of the week, my unmissable thing of the week, they released 3 episodes last night. And each episode ended with a cliffhanger, the same way the pit just ended with a cliffhanger, which meant that I was up until 1 o'clock in the morning because I refused to go to bed without knowing what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
So the fact that we're back to the, again, like we were talking about earlier, the old network model of a once a week show, and it should end on a cliffhanger, and we should have a week to all be talking about this like we are now, to be chatting with our friends and in our group chats asking, have you seen the pit yet? And getting like very, very excited for next Thursday when we get to finally find out what happened. So I don't feel, I think some people feel cheated when they really want to find out what happens next and there's nothing to binge. I know a lot of people in my life who will save a show until the entire season is available for them to stream all at once.
That's insane behavior to me.
Yeah, no, I like this visceral experience of a week-to-week thing of noodling about it and talking to friends about it and getting emotional about it. And I'm happy that the pit is bringing that back again.
Yeah, I'm just so thrilled to have this show back. Yeah, it's definitely our unmissable show of the week, and it was just renewed for season 3, which is no surprise. But I think this show could run forever. I mean, ER ran for a very long time, and this show, I think, has that kind of potential, maybe even more. So yeah, I'm excited to see what happens next. Before we get to the interview today, we did promise viewers and listeners in the last episode that we'd be reading comments that you're leaving on these episodes. We love getting your comments. It's so exciting to see people engaging with the show. And I wanted to share one just because I thought it was so funny, and I don't think Kevin has seen this yet.
I'm excited now.
Yeah. So this was one of the comments left on the YouTube episode. So it says, the video of Timothy Chalamet, talking with his PR people that was leaked was so cringe and unbelievably douchey. I thought, oh yeah, now I get why he is with a Kardashian. I gave him way too much credit for Dune.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah.
I thought I was being mean-spirited about Timothy, but I guess I've met my match.
Yeah, no, that was a great comment, and we really want to hear more from you guys. So please leave a comment on YouTube. You can leave a review and a rating on Apple. So yeah, we really want everyone to be engaging with the show, and it's so exciting to be hearing from you. But now let's go to my conversation with the woman who Chevy Chase said was not bright enough to make a documentary about him. Marina Zenovich, welcome to Obsessed, the podcast. I'm so happy to have you here, and I am obsessed with your new documentary, I'm Chevy Chase and You're Not. So it's so great to have you here.
Thank you. Well, I'm obsessed, so we're all obsessed.
So I really want to get into the documentary and your work, but what I like to start these interviews with is a question about your own pop culture history and diet, starting with the first piece of pop culture that you remember being really obsessed with growing up as a kid or sort of as a young adult. Like what was your thing that you really loved?
Oh, well, Brady Bunch. I
That's a good one.
dream of Jeannie. I mean, it's kind of like, I'm a girl.
Yeah.
I was a huge fan of
shows
television.
that you connected with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, is that considered pop culture to you? I mean, I don't
Totally.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like I always wanted to be an actress.
Oh,
So
really?
that's kind of what I started out as. And I love performers and performing. And so I watched a lot of television growing up, the boob tube, right?
Yeah, I was wondering if you are also a big comedy fan because so much of your work now has centered on comedians. You made films about Richard Pryor and Robin Williams before this Chevy Chase documentary. So what is your relationship to comedy and then also, sort of Chevy Chase's work specifically?
Well, I mean, it's funny how a career kind of unfolds. I started making films just because they interested me, and my first film was about the struggles of independent filmmakers, called Independence Day, independent apostrophe S. Then I made a film about a French former politician, convicted criminal turned actor named who is Bernard Tapie. Then I made the Roman Polanski film, and then I ended up getting a call about, I think Richard Pryor was the first one, and that intrigued me. I mean, I was a huge fan of Richard Pryor. Robin Williams, the same thing. And Chevy, I mean, Foul Play is like one of my all-time favorite movies. So it's not like I was like, I'm going to make films about comedians. It's just kind of, it just happens. And then people think you're good at something. So then they call you and, want you to explore something else. I remember after I finished, was it Robin? I got a call about doing something about the Comedy Store. And it was just so the wrong time. Like, I just did this whole thing on Robin Williams. Like, I don't want to be in that world again. Like, if you call me today with that, I'd be like all over it. Just, you have to be, it has to kind of excite you, and you have to be open to what it is. So I don't know if I answered your question, but of course I love comedy. I love comedians. I love jokes. I love bits. With Chevy, I mean, he was just doing nonstop bits. That was like a little frustrating, very funny. But like, I left that first interview going like, oh my God, we got nothing. Like, we got nothing. And I told my editor.
Yeah. Was it in that first interview that you got the moment that has now become sort of the moment of the movie where he, you're talking about trying to, get to know him better and get to make this film about him. And he basically comes right out and says, you're not bright enough to figure him out, to understand him. Which obviously he didn't think you were going to keep in the film, but you did.
I mean, duh, of course I'd keep it in the film. That was the first interview.
Wow.
I'm just trying to figure you out.
No shit. It's not going to be easy for you.
Why is it not going to be easy?
You're not bright enough. How's that?
Whoa.
Well, you asked. I know you're not going to put that on the air, and I hope not. But my answer is, I'm complex, and I'm deep, and I can be hurt easily, and I react spontaneously to people who want to figure me out, as it were. As somebody who will hold up my guard. I'm not going to let anybody figure me out, per se.
Was approached to make a film about him. I was a huge fan. I had no idea about his reputation, but little by little, I started hearing more. And let me tell you, people start emailing you, and everyone has a story, which was surprising to me. So I knew I had to bring that up when I interviewed him, but I was afraid to bring it up because it was the second time I met him, and I didn't know if he would like throw me out of his house or what. So that was kind of my, oh God, how am I going to bring this up? How am I going to bring this up? And then when I said, I'm just trying to figure you out, he said, you're not going to be able to. And I'm like, why? And he's like, because you're not bright enough. And I was like, oh, there's my opening. There's my opening. So I was like, well, people think you're an asshole. And he was like, what? He was so shocked. And I was so like, in the moment, I mean, I'm not thinking about, of course, I don't want someone to say you're not bright enough, but I mean, it's like all I'm thinking about is getting the goods. I'm not thinking about my ego or anything. And so the minute he said that, I was like, there's my end. Let's go. Like, this is going to be good.
Yeah, it's so funny because like for a lot of people, they might have that moment and someone says that to them, and you've described it as the rudest interview subject that you've ever encountered, and you might think this is going to be a disaster. How am I going to make this film? But you had sort of the opposite takeaway from it.
Well, I mean, it was rude, but there's nuance there. I mean, Chevy's way of dealing with things is doing bits, so. For someone who's so sharp, he's incredibly sensitive, and he can, he can dish it out, but he can't take it. I mean, It's like, you don't think like, oh shit, like if he said, bitch, get out of my house, that'd be a different story, but he didn't.
Yeah.
Like, we just kept going, and then we took a break, and he didn't kick me out of his house, and so I thought, okay, we got that, so then we just kept going. I mean, you have no idea. I mean, part of the excitement of this job is you have no idea what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And yes, he was rude, but, I think he was just being himself. and I was just doing my job. And, Lance Armstrong wasn't rude to me. I've made films about people who weren't in them or weren't alive. But there's a etiquette. When you're interviewing someone, but you're really just, as the interviewer, you're just trying to get the goods. And get someone to be authentic and genuine and kind of connect to their emotional world. So I felt like I got that. And, the camera's rolling, like, he's like, you're not going to use that. I hope you don't use that. And I'm like,
Yeah,
but I really
okay.
didn't think we got that much. And then my editor was like, oh, you got a lot. Like, you never, I don't know, I'm really hard on myself and I'm always just trying to get more. So what was hard with Chevy was like getting emotional. That's what I was just wanted more, but he would kind of stop himself. He wanted to, but it was hard.
Yeah, I think he seems like he was uncomfortable with being a subject of a documentary in some ways, in the way he answered questions or didn't want to answer questions. Why do you think he wanted to do this in the first place? Why did he agree to be in a documentary, let you make this documentary about him and be part of it?
I really don't know. I mean, when I set out to make a film about somebody, I don't ask them, like, why do you want to do this? Like, I just let them speak for themselves when the camera's on. I think his family probably wanted something done. I think she could have gone either way. I also feel that there are a lot of documentaries these days. Everyone kind of has a documentary about them. And, I think he, perhaps on some level, I can't speak for him, but maybe he felt like he deserved a documentary. I mean, for me, as the documentary filmmaker, he's a perfect documentary subject because you're trying to, like, get to him, and he has this reputation, and, you're trying to interview people who are trying to give you a glimpse into his world. And then you have his family life, which is so kind of anathema to his reputation. So there are a lot of layers there that I didn't realize would hit so many nerves with so many people. So I don't look at this and go like, oh my God, he was the rudest person who I ever interviewed. I mean, I said that kind of flippantly because it was kind of true, but it's not like that's what I think of. I just think of our kind of tete-a-tetes and trying to get him to open up. And I think not as much as we could.
No, I think you got a lot. I think there are a lot of factors that made him a challenging documentary subject. One is that I think there were some memory issues, perhaps, that come through in the film, which you explore a little bit, not too much. What was your thoughts on that? Do you feel like he was not all there in the same way that maybe he was, 20 years ago or whatever it is? He sort of keeps talking about how he thinks that the SNL cast member Terry Sweeney is dead, and I can't tell if that's a joke or if that's something that he keeps forgetting whether that's true or not.
I think it was
cast
a
member
joke.
who he had a conflict with. But then there's also the moment where it's sort of implied that Lorne Michaels was concerned enough about his mental state to keep him out of SNL 50.
Chevy was in a coma. It's, when you make a documentary about someone, it's not like you get a one sheet from the person going, okay, this is what I want to talk about. This is what I've been through. This is the level of memory I have. You have to like seek it out. By the time I interviewed and you get more information, like that's part of the treasure hunt. Like as you're interviewing different people, you're getting more information. No one sat me down and said, I could Google it and see that he was in the hospital, but I didn't know the details. And it's not like they were readily shared with me at the beginning of the process. So I'm in this process of trying to piece it all together. And it wasn't until I got the interview with Kaylee where she literally says in the film, like, did anyone talk to you about this? Because they weren't that open about it. And I didn't know how much they wanted to share, but I think it explains a lot. And
Yeah, that there was this
glad.
shift in his personality or his, memory and all that when he had this medical event that put him in a coma.
It's kind of like I had initially thought it was from drug use, but the more I learned about what had happened, it was kind of like, oh, this makes sense. Now he can always fall back on jokes like, oh, he's dead, right?
Yeah.
Because he's going to fall back on a joke or a bit to like put something in front of you to stop you from getting what you want, which is part of the dance. But yeah, I think his memory is really affected. And then I think there are things he doesn't want to remember. And there are things like a computer that's, was rebooted that he just lost.
Yeah.
And I think with regards to Lorne, I mean, show business is ruthless, and Lorne is, I think, in my opinion, ruthless about that show. So he was going to do what he wanted to do. As much as he loves Chevy, he did what he wanted to do with his show. He said a great thing to me that wasn't in the film. He said, Bernie Brillstein said to me, and I never understood it at the time, that the real star of the show is the show. And it's like, that is the star, the show. And so he cares about his show. He cares about people and feelings. He's very thoughtful. But I think he did what he felt he was best for his show.
What was it like interviewing Lorne in his office there? I mean, that's something that not a lot of people have done. So that's a special experience in itself.
Oh my God. I was so excited. It took months and months. But we finally got in that room and we set up. And then they said, oh, he has to have a meeting in here. Could you move all the equipment? And we're like, well, we only have 20 minutes. Like, it'll take us 15 minutes to move everything.
Yeah.
So, but he ended up, it was a very funny interview because he ended up giving me more time and his assistants kept coming in trying to stop the interview. And I was like, literally, I'm almost done. But I was just, I mean, he is.
Yeah. You could have talked to him for days.
Forever. Yeah. Just so insightful and smart and savvy and Canadian. And it was great. I think he enjoyed it. I was thrilled to get him. And Mike Ovitz was another one who really, to me, is really adds a lot. And that took a lot of work as well.
Yeah. The other section of the film that has gotten some attention is everything surrounding Community. You talked about how you tried to get people from Community to be in this film, and pretty much everybody said no. Dan Harmon, the creator, all of the cast. You ended up getting, one of the directors who adds a lot to the film. What was that process like for you? And, why did you feel like it was important to have those people in? And then why do you think that nobody agreed to do it?
It's so funny. And I don't think a lot of people, especially reviewers, understand how documentaries work. It's not like everyone says yes. And especially in this day and age, because there are so many documentary films. And I think a lot of people are overexposed, especially with social media. Of course, I had to have someone from Community. Of course, I wanted it to be the cast. Or Dan, who I ran into and literally was like, is that Dan Harmon? My friend was like, I don't know. And I'm like, Dan. And he turned around. And I was like, my heart was beating. I'm like, I'm Marina Zenovich. I'm making a film about Chevy Chase. Would you ever be in the film? And he was like, we traded numbers. But in the end, he didn't want to do it. Jay Chandrasekhar is a great storyteller. He was there directing. He directed several episodes, but he kind of knew the lay of the land, and I thought he was a perfect person. I mean, if I didn't get anyone, how was I going to tell that story?
Yep.
Chevy didn't want to talk about it, and you want to get, you want to get the people who were there. So, I mean, I like to say with docs, you're kind of working with found objects. Like it's whoever you can get to tell the story. You're trying to get the person who's closest to what's happened in that moment, but oftentimes you don't get the right, well, it's something you don't get the right people. It's just like you don't get people. So
Yeah.
when I got Jay, and he was such a great storyteller and had so much to say, and he was willing to talk about it, that was huge.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
yeah, but I
I loved
can't
how you.
force people
Yeah.
into doing an interview. I mean, it's kind of like, I'll do something like if someone writes and says, one of the cast members, like the assistant wrote back and said, they're not available at that time.
Yeah.
And I didn't even
Okay.
offer a time.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was just a young
That's the
kid.
worst.
And I wrote back
Yeah.
and said, like, read your email. Like, I haven't offered a time. Are they available another time? Clearly,
Yeah.
it was like a learning on the job. But I wanted to talk to everyone. I mean, I was surprised when Yvette Nicole Brown spoke out on Instagram, but I reached out to her and she didn't want to talk to me. And I get it. And I respect that. But people clearly feel very strongly about what happened. And I did the best that I could. And I think
Yeah.
we got some great stories out of it, trying to explain kind of what had happened.
Yeah, I thought one really interesting thing that I hadn't thought about that you drew the connection to, and actually I think Chevy kind of drew himself, is the connection between this incident where he allegedly, said the N-word on set, and what's probably his most iconic SNL sketch with Richard Pryor, another person you have spent a lot of time thinking about, where he said that word on TV on Saturday Night Live in a comedic context, which you obviously couldn't do that sketch. There's a lot of talk about like what comedy you could and couldn't do today, and I think a lot of that is overblown. But like, I think that is a sketch that you probably couldn't do today.
Right.
So yeah, how did you think about the connection between those two things? It says a lot about how comedy has changed, how culture has changed over those decades.
Well, we had to have it in the movie to kind of prove the point.
Yeah.
And show the parallels. But yeah, things have changed a lot. I mean, it's everything and everyone is incredibly sensitive right now for good reason, but it's a bit rude for me. I'm not talking about race in particular. I'm just saying there's a lot of sensitivity.
Yes. Ultimately, when you look at the film as a whole and what you were able to do, what do you think you were able to reveal about Chevy Chase that wasn't known before? What do you sort of hope that people take away from it?
I like the nuance. I like the gray. I don't like black and white. I think we were able to kind of show who he is without showing everything. And I really like to make films that let the audience decide. I don't like to spoon feed. I just like to kind of let the person show who they are. I think, what I really give Chevy kudos for is how he was able to, once he found the perfect partner, like create this family and stop the generational trauma, which just sounds so on the nose, but it's like, that's huge, right? I mean, he has such a loving relationship with his daughters, and it's like he didn't want to do to them what was done to him. And that is kind of a really big deal. So I was really surprised to learn about his upbringing. And I don't think a lot of people know about that. Of course, it doesn't excuse him, but it does really color who he is. What's weird though is the internet just really like wants all the gory, gross stuff and to like pit me against him and all that. It wasn't like that. I have a soft spot for Chevy.
Yeah.
I really do. I think he's been through a lot.
Yeah, people sort of latched onto this idea that the trauma that he experienced, the abuse that he experienced as a kid would explain or excuse his behavior as an adult. And that's the sort of black and white version of it where, as you said, it is so much more nuanced than that. It might help us understand why he is the way he is, but it doesn't make everything that he has done okay.
Yeah, and when you're making a film like this, I mean, you're trying to tell as much of the story as possible, but you're, as I said before, it's like found objects. You're limited by what you get, who's willing to talk to you, how deep they're willing to go. I mean, these things are not easy at all. I mean, it's really you're limited, and it's like you're, I was fascinated by the cocaine use, and I wanted like cocaine stories, and to get his brother talking about coming out. I think he was at La Dome, and the pyramid of cocaine. Like, you want to know about those times. You want to, I wanted more, but you kind of can only get as much as you get. I think we got a lot, but
Yeah.
it's really like you're always digging, and you never know who's going to be a good interview, who's not going to be good. That's part of the fun,
Yeah,
it's
totally.
like when someone surprises you, and really like tells you, what you didn't think they'd be willing to say.
Yeah, well, I found the film totally fascinating. As a huge SNL, fan myself, and fan of his over the years, and just fascinated by him. So yeah, I really love the film. Who's next on your
Thank
list
you.
of subjects? Who's the next? You've done pretty much all men, I feel like.
I tried to do, I almost did Jessica Simpson, but that didn't work out.
Oh,
I wanted to do Carla Bruni at a certain point, but that didn't happen. I have like a whole list.
Yeah, long
I like
list.
to keep a list of projects that didn't happen to remind myself. I don't know who's next. I mean, I feel like who's left.
who hasn't had a documentary made about them?
Yeah. I don't know. Something will come.
Yeah,
always
is
does.
there a white whale on the list? Someone who you just like, if in your wildest dreams, that you could
Warren
make a film
Beatty.
about
I
them?
mean, I talked to Warren for a while. I'm sure others have as well, but I have a funny Warren story. He got my home number. I told Annette Banning this story because it's so funny. He got my home number. I don't know how. I mean, of course he knows how to, I think we're both with CAA, but my phone only rings when I get robocalls, right? Except if it's Warren Beatty. And he was calling me for a while. We were talking about it, but in the end, I don't think he wanted to do it. I'd love to do Jack Nicholson. Who else? Some interesting European figures. I was trying to do Boris Johnson at a certain point. I mean, it's like people's lives are so fascinating. It's just, it has to be the right mix of like, who's willing to talk, who kind of people are interested in. And, Chevy ticked a lot of those boxes.
We have a segment on this podcast called Unmissable, where we talk about the thing in pop culture that's unmissable right now. If listeners could only see one thing that you've made, what do you think it should be?
Well, Roman Polanski's a pretty hot button topic. Either Roman or Lance or Chevy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard. I mean, I love them all,
Hard to pick your babies.
Yeah.
Yeah. And finally, what is something from pop culture that you are obsessed with right now? Is there anything that you're watching or that you've seen, movies, TV shows, anything that just really connected with you that you would recommend to people?
I'm kind of getting through the international. I'm a big international film person, so
there's a lot of good ones this year.
There are, I mean, Sentimental Value.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah, that's fantastic film. Well, Marina, thank you so much for doing this. As I said, I love the Chevy Chase doc, and it's been so great talking with you. I'm Chevy Chase, and You're Not is available to stream now on CNN. Marina, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, by the way, don't forget, I'm on Substack at obsessed.substack.com, so subscribe to read all of my deranged, brilliant thoughts about The Pit and so much more.
All right, that was so much fun. Thank you to Kevin Fallon. Thank you to Marina Zenovich. Please subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts, on YouTube, at the Obsessed channel, anywhere else that you listen to podcasts. Please leave us comments as well. We love hearing what you think about the show. We'll be back with an all-new episode all about the Golden Globes, and Kevin is going to have a very special guest to break that down as well. So we can't wait to see you here then. Thank you so much for listening. See you very soon.